Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Today we're going to be talking about the difference of Ukraine attacking Russia versus Russia attacking Ukraine. And of course, we're going to be discussing it together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. Because honestly, reading all the propaganda, especially on Twitter, boy, is that suffering, because Ukraine and Russia are not the same here. So as per usual, please leave your questions, suggestions, thoughts, constructive criticism, anything in your mind in the comments down below, and I will surely read them, and I absolutely love this back and forth communication. Let's go. Let's start with the fact that obviously I do not look news ready today. I look tired and I look winded, and that is because I went to sleep at 6 in the morning, along with the rest of the people in Kyiv. Before we start talking about the difference in how Russia strikes Ukraine versus how Ukraine strikes Russia, I want to tell you a bit of a personal story and a bit of a human factor here. So, have you ever had your fridge start defrosting? It makes that sound, and it's like a very burly, kind of like annoying, really weird pitched sound, right? So when you have 60 shaheds overhead, they all make that same sound. So last night, it felt like I was sitting inside of a fridge that was defrosting, except I was not in the fridge. I was in an apartment, and these noises were coming not from a fridge. They were coming from a plethora of shahed drones that were flying right above my head. At about 2:30 in the morning, I woke up because of terrible explosions and my partner's dog jumping on the bed with us, and I, having my dogs back in my apartment, was awake until 4 in the morning, listening to the very, very loud explosions and trying to convince myself to not go to my apartment in the middle of heavy bombardment to check on my dogs. And one of the reasons why is because we have curfew until 5 in the morning in Kyiv during wartime, and also because, well, there was all hell breaking loose outside. Yet at 4 in the morning, I did jump in my car and I did drive to my apartment to check on my dogs, who were absolutely terrified. And I was terrified for them because, well, obviously, Ukraine is getting bombed by Russia every single day. However, you never know when a big one is going to happen. And for some reason, the big one always happens when I'm not staying at home. So I got to my home. My dogs were terrified. We spent until, I want to say, 5:30, so another hour and a half, sheltering because it was loud. There were a lot of shahed drones. In the beginning of the night, there was a ballistic missile attack, and in fact, it landed not very far away from where I'm recording this right now, and it's not the first time that it had landed close to my office or my home or something of that nature. The two cities that suffered the most yesterday were Kyiv and Odesa. As far as we know at the moment of recording, there are 2 deaths in Odesa and 4 injuries in Kyiv. If I could describe the view from my 15th story apartment yesterday, there was billowing black smoke coming from, well, I'm assuming actually here. And it looked like Armageddon because by the time I got home, it was starting to get lighter outside and the sky was orange with billowing black smoke coming into it. And that was what I want to say what I woke up to, but not really. That's what I went to bed to because of Russia. Now, the reason why we're talking about this today is, well, obvious, but also because I keep seeing lots of trolls on Twitter talk about how Ukraine does not want peace because Ukraine keeps striking the Kerch Bridge, Ukraine keeps striking Russian airfields, and Ukraine keeps striking Russian oil depots and Russian ammunition depots. And, obviously bad Ukraine doesn't want peace. And it's very clear that instead of negotiating, we're doing all of these horrendous things. Russia has been striking Ukraine for 3.5 years, every single day. Some cities are not under fire every single day, but the entire country is under fire every single day. I can't tell you when the last time was that I actually slept through the night without a single air raid alarm. I can't tell you when I wasn't scared that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow. I can't tell you when was the last time. Well, actually, no, I can. I can tell you the last time that I slept through the night was actually when I was outside of Ukraine and I was in Europe. And that was, at this point, I think 3 weeks ago. Russia doesn't strike military infrastructure. Russia purposely targets civilians. Every single one of these daily terrors and nightly terrors is landing on civilian areas. And it's not just because it's an accident or, the drones flew somewhere where they were not supposed to. No, Shaheds get coordinates, and they are a kamikaze drone, which means that the coordinates are preset when the drone launches, and that's where the drone flies to. So they are being set for specific coordinates, and they do fly over civilian areas, and they do specifically and intentionally target civilian areas. Putin's strategy is to exhaust the population so the population falls on its knees and decides that it wants to surrender to Russia. It only makes us angrier. It's not a strategy that's going to work. But the point is that the difference between Russia and Ukraine is that every single time that Ukraine has targeted anything in Russia, it has always been solely military infrastructure. And it's the infrastructure that, in fact, is directly responsible for targeting civilians daily in Ukraine. So when Ukraine disables aircraft, when Ukraine disables oil storage, gas and oil storage, right, which is what you put, the fuel that you put into those airplanes. When Ukraine disables launchers, when Ukraine disables drone factories or drone depots, we are doing that not to attack. We're doing that so that we can minimize attacks on ourselves. That, in fact, is something that can lead to peace, while what Russia is doing during these negotiations is, in fact, deadly and bloody and targeting civilians. And I know I sound quite rallied up today, but hey, try not sleeping the whole night and then showing up at work and functioning and, try having a couple of hours of sleep at most for the past couple of weeks. And I'll see how well you function. Meanwhile, when all of these trolls on Twitter and all of these pro-Russian accounts and all of these brainwashed people that for some reason support Russia and love to give Ukraine grief, when they write that Ukraine doesn't want peace, at that same time during the negotiations, Russian delegation members say that Russians want Moscow to strike Ukraine with an oreshnik. Russians want heavier measures. They don't want negotiations. Russians think that Kyiv should be hit with an oreshnik missile. For your information, an oreshnik missile is a missile that explodes in air into 6 or 7 separate missiles and hits, like for instance, if you have a regular cruise missile, it hits a specific target, right? And like an area around that target gets destroyed. This missile blows up in air into 6 different missiles or however many, and they all strike different targets in the same area. So it's designed to cause the maximum amount of damage. And that's what Russians, not Putin, not just his people, not just his propagandists, Russian citizens. That's what they want for him to use on Kyiv. It was previously used on Dnipro before, and it caused a tremendous amount of damage and destruction and loss of life. And this is what the Russian citizens want to happen to us. That's what they're asking for instead of negotiations. In case you need proof of that, the Russians are demanding that Putin strike Kyiv with the oreshnik system. They want harsher actions. They're tired of negotiations, said the head of the Russian delegation, Vladimir Medinsky, Russian delegation to the peace talks, that is. So when you read things like that, and when you know what's actually happening, it is not just infuriating, it's enraging to see misguided, brainwashed, or simply just evil people talk about how Ukraine does not want peace. In this entire time, Ukraine has only struck objects of Russian military infrastructure that are directly responsible for killing tons of Ukrainian civilians while they're asleep or on their way to work or in school every day. Russia, for 3.5 years, has been tormenting endlessly Ukrainian civilians on purpose, daily. And we are being painted as the bad guy who does not want the end of negotiations, who does not want the end of the war. We do. And the only way to end this war is to disable Russia's ability to torment us, which is what we're doing by striking the Kerch Bridge, for instance, which is Russia's biggest hub for military transportation. It's not a civilian bridge. It's a military transportation bridge. This is exactly what we're doing by destroying aircraft at Alenia airfield, which is where the Tu bombers that struck us yesterday, for instance, come from. This is exactly what we're doing with the Russian fleet, which is where Russian warships are sending missiles from. This is exactly what we're doing with Russian drone factories that are sending tons of Shaheds to torment us every night. And this is exactly what we're doing with missile launchers that Russia has on the ground. Meanwhile, for Russia, military targets are sleeping civilians. Meanwhile, for Russia, it's all fair game because there are no rules in love and war. And interestingly, you might have heard that phrase maybe once in a blue moon, maybe you have heard it before, maybe you have not. But growing up in the post-Soviet space, most movies, most pop culture, most everything consistently kept telling you there are no rules in love and war. Basically saying that, you can harass someone if you want them, and you can do whatever it is that you want in war because there are no rules in it. However, there are rules in war. There is the Geneva Convention, and we live in 2025, which is supposed to be the modern time, not the barbarian time, where rules and laws of warfare should apply. But for Russia, they don't. Last night, air defense forces neutralized 284 aerial targets overnight, with Kyiv being the main direction of the attack. Ukrainian forces shot down 213 Shahed drones. Another 64 were lost from radar. 2 KN-23 ballistic missiles and 5 Iskander-K cruise missiles. In total, Russia launched 322 aerial targets. There were confirmed strikes in 11 locations, and debris fell in 16 locations. That's a country that wants peace, right? 300 plus aerial targets, ballistic missiles, supersonic missiles. That is what we go to bed to and wake up to every day. And, I don't wish anyone to be in our shoes, but I wish people could understand and could see what that feels like before commenting things like Ukraine doesn't want peace. That's all I have for you for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you will share this episode with as many people as you possibly can, that you like it, and that you leave a comment, that you also subscribe to this channel and turn on all of your notifications, because all of that helps in the economy of YouTube for this video to reach as many eyes as possible. And of course, as per usual, if you have something to say, please do so in the comments down below, and I'll make sure to read it. See you next time.